Shall we kick off? Good evening and welcome, everybody. I'm Councillor Sayar Raza, Chair of Overview and Scrutiny Committee. It's now just after 7 and I'd like to welcome everybody to this meeting of the committee, my fellow scrutineers, cabinet members and officers of the council and members of the public, whether present with us at Hansa House or watching the committee on council's YouTube channel. Our agenda today sees us look at the work of the council's delivery plan, as well as considering newly formed carer service, which provides assistance to unpaid carers. In addition, we have several shorter items on the agenda. There are updates from chairs of this year's scrutiny panels, a review of council's forward plan, a chance to review and revise the committee's own work programme, and any urgent business should there be any. Having walked through the content of today's committee, I'll now take a few moments to set out the mechanics of the meeting. As chair, I'll run the meeting and invite people to speak, I hope by combining question and observations to allow for a fluid discussion. I shall invite our guests to introduce the reports. I will invite members of the committee to ask questions of our guests. I, or Councillor Mosley, as my vice chair, shall then speak last and then briefly sum up the discussion and advise of any issues or common ground to note. Every member of the committee who wishes to speak will have the opportunity to speak. Please be mindful of your fellow committee members and our guests and ensure your contributions are pertinent and help us frame meaningful recommendations. I have set out the way in which I'll chair the meeting. Shall we begin? For the benefit of our guests and those who may be watching us online this evening, would my fellow committee members like to introduce themselves?
Councillor Mosley, Brentford East.
Councillor Alan Mitchell, Felton West.
Councillor Emma Yates, Brentford West.
Councillor Adesh Parman, Bedford Wood.
Councillor Emma Sidhu, Heston West.
Councillor Hina Mir, Chair for Housing and Environment Panel.
Wonderful, thank you. Let's move on swiftly then to agenda item number 1. These are apologies for absence, declaration of interest and other communications from members. I have received 2 apologies from Councillor Elmsey, Councillor Sharma. Is there any others I'm unaware of? And is there any declaration of interest from any committee members? No, brilliant, thank you. We do then move on to agenda item number 2. This is the minutes. We have before us a 2 set of minutes from our 7th of May and 9th of June meetings. May was the final meeting of the old municipal year. Of course, the membership of the committee has changed somewhat since then, but there are enough of us who were part of the Overview Scrutiny in 2024-25 to able to review the minutes and, I hope, approve them as an accurate record. June's minutes is a shorter affair, given that the meeting focused on agreeing the committee's vice chair and other chairs of the 3 scrutiny panels. Does anyone have issue of accuracy? If not, let me know. Otherwise, we agree all the minutes now. Agreed? Yeah. Thank you. Okay, we're going to do a little bit of a change with the agenda. So we're actually going to be looking at item number 5 first, and then we're going to move to the delivery plan. So item number 5 is updates from scrutiny panels, the North West London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. Members of the committee will know we have 3 scrutiny panels working across the municipal year. We are still in the early stage of the panel's deep dives, but we still have updates from chairs. Councillor Sidhu, would you like to provide an update on the work of Children and Young People's Scrutiny Panel, please?
The Children and Young People Scrutiny Panel met for the first time on Thursday, the 19th of June 2025. We agreed that Councillor Alan Joseph would be acting as the panel vice chair for the remainder of the scrutiny year. This year, we'll be doing a deep dive on Family First Partnership Programme. This is a new programme that focuses on early intervention for children and young people. The programme is aimed to improve outcomes and reduce the need of secondary safeguarding interventions. We will discuss and agree the draft terms of reference in our next meeting on Tuesday, the 23rd of September. We will be joined by Jennifer Hopper as a co-optee, Jennifer Chapstick, a MBE for Chair Governor from Fairholme Primary School, Rachel, a Chair Governor from Chiswick School, Reverend Michael from St Lawrence Catholic Church, and Chris from Hope Church. Our next meeting after that will take place on the 24th of November, where we discuss the topic for the next scrutiny year. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. And Councillor Farmerhand, please.
Thank you, Chair. The municipal year, the Health and Adult Care Scrutiny Panel has met twice and formally agreed its terms of reference. The panel's deep dive is focusing on the ongoing pressures within adult social care, with a particular emphasis on the integration of health and social care services in Hounslow. The follows on from the previous year, working on commissioning and contract management, which found processes to be robust and delivering value for money, whilst also highlighting the significant and sustained pressure on adult social care budget. At our meeting to date, we have heard from Ben Collin, Program Director of Integrated Care and Patient Representative, who share values, insights into the opportunities and challenges of integrated care from the both strategic and lived experience perspective. Their contribution have helped shape the panel's lines of queries, particularly around how services will be experienced by residents, how system partners are working together, and whether the integration model will be successful in Hounslow. The panel's key lines of queries for this year are as following. Residents' experience. How are residents experiencing changes in service delivery under the integrated care model, and how are their voices being captured in its implementation? Impact on outcomes. What early evidence is there? The integration is improving patient outcomes, particularly in terms of quality of life, hospital admissions, and quantity of cares, workforce and capacity. Does the current health and care workforce in Hounslow have the capacity, skill, and resources to deliver the new integrated model of care? Partnership working. How are health, social care, voluntary sector partners working together in practice, and what governance structures are in place to support collaborations, scalability, and sustainability? What are the lessons from the two test areas, and what conditions would be necessary to scale this model across the borough sustainability? The panel will continue to engage with a wide range of stakeholders over the remainder of the municipal year, including senior officers, lead members, voluntary sector partners, to ensure evidence is gathered from municipal perspective. Further meeting will allow us to examine in more details the lesson emerging from the test sites due to go live in September 2025, and to consider the potential for scaling up integrated models of care across the borough. Through this work, the panel aims to provide constructive recommendation at the end of the municipal year to help ensure the integration delivers sustainable improvement in outcomes for residents while remaining financial resilience across the system. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Brilliant. And Councillor Meir, please.
Thank you, Chair. This municipal year, the Housing and Environment Scrutiny Panel has met twice and formally agreed its term of reference. The panel is undertaking a deep dive into land ownership within the borough, with a particular focus on the challenges caused by unclear responsibility for land. This includes issues such as fly tipping, parking, antisocial behavior, and safety hazards. The inquiry builds on the scrutiny in a day session, which highlighted how a lack of clarity around the land ownership hampers enforcement and delays resolution of problems. So far, the panel has heard from Lauren Nash, Head of Regulatory Services, who shared valuable insights into the opportunities and challenges associated with land ownership in Hounslow. Their evidence has shaped the panel's line of inquiry, particularly around the difficulty and cost of establishing land ownership and the potential benefits of centralized system. The panel has agreed the following key lines of inquiry for this year, which are key issues: what problems arise from undetermined land ownership and how widespread are they across the council? Benefits: which parts of the organization would benefit from most new system to monitor land ownership? Current system: how does the council currently manage land ownership issues under existing arrangements? Potential solutions: what systems exist elsewhere and what are the cost and feasibility of adopting them? Over the remainder of the municipal year, the panel will continue to engage with a wide range of stakeholders, including senior officers, lead members, and potentially other councils. To ensure a comprehensive evidence base, future meetings will allow for deeper exploration of findings from invited speakers. Through this work, the panel aims to develop constructive recommendations by year end to improve the borough's approach to land ownership, ensuring great clarity and effectiveness while minimizing cost and administration burden to the council. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Sharma is the council representative for North West London Joint Health and Overview Scrutiny Committee. I know industrial action led to the postponement of last week's meeting, but when Councillor Sharma joins us for November meeting at OSC, I'm sure she'll provide an update on the recent work of the North West London Joint Health Overview and Scrutiny Committee. I'm sure full council will be more than happy to discuss this outside of this meeting with any sort of committee members if they do like to know more. I look forward to hearing future updates. Okay. We move now to sort of agenda item number 3. So just coming back to the main substantive item, reviewing the council's delivery plan. So this is 2022-26. Long-serving members of this committee will remember that we regularly receive progress reports on the council's delivery plan, alongside the council's One Hounslow financial strategy and the budget, both of which we'll be scrutinising in coming months. The delivery plan is a key plank in the council's transformation efforts, which help address some of the financial pressures we have considering over recent years. This year, and influenced by suggestions made by the Centre of Governance and Scrutiny in their 2024 report assessing scrutiny in Hounslow, we are taking a step back from individual programmes and projects to consider the delivery plan in the round. Given that the delivery plan will be soon concluded, it is a good time to consider what has been achieved and what remains to be done. Members will recall that we've been asked to scrutinise the approach to delivery of the Council's priority through the delivery plan 2022-26, utilising the One Hounslow PPM approach. Identify opportunities for change and improvements in the approach to adopting the delivery plan for 26-30 that will enable even more effective delivery of the Council's outcomes and priorities. We are joined this evening by Councillor Shantanu Rajawat, the leader of the Council and portfolio holder for Strategy, Resources and External Affairs, Andrew Cox, Director of Climate and Strategy Programmes, Andrew Connor, Head of Digital Transformation. A warm welcome to you all. Councillor Rajawat, would you like to introduce your report? You have 5 minutes.
Do you say 20 minutes? Do I really have 25? I was going to say. Thank you very much, Chair. Yeah, you've said a lot that of what I was going to say, but of course, members of the committee will know that the delivery plan, along with financial monitoring, very regularly goes to Cabinet, and I absolutely welcome the opportunity to sit before you and have it scrutinised in line with the recommendations of the Centre for Public Scrutiny, looking at it in the round, and if we need to get into a little bit more detail, very happy to do so around that. By way of reminder, there are 4 portfolios in the delivery plan: people, place, capital, and digital, that make up the reports that we see. And the overarching aim is to transform the way that the council operates, make us much closer to our residents, offer opportunities that we previously perhaps didn't or couldn't for whatever reason, and also perhaps get some benefit from that in preventing crisis happening in the first instance. So there is a lot of work going on, and it's probably timely actually, as we get to the end of the administration. Obviously the political groups on the council will start thinking about what they want to do in 26 and what they want to offer up, and that is something that we're starting to think about. We may not actually have any solid thoughts as of yet. There are ideas floating around, but it's a good opportunity to really understand how far we've come. And I think that, credit to the officer team and actually us as members across the piece, we've achieved quite a bit over the last 3.5 years, and there's still more to go. It is also to flag that some of the projects that you'll see have a longer time horizon, and that's absolutely right as well, because long-term change takes time. It is not quick, and so we have to make sure that we've got the rigor to carry on doing that. What the delivery plan may not necessarily cover in its entirety, but you will get assurance on later on when I come back for the budget, is some of the savings that we agreed at the budget, both this one and the one previously. Whilst some of those do coterminous with the delivery plan, some are slightly different as well. But just to reassure the committee, those are also being monitored in the same way. Chair, you quite rightly pointed out, one of the weaknesses we've had in the past when we've sought to implement plans for delivery is we've not really had that project management support around it. So working on the principles of program and project management principles, which takes in the best of different project management methodologies, does deliver good results, and they're based on the 9 pillars that are set out on page 23 of the agenda under 4.3, just as a reminder. So rather than me droning on, I want to give you as much time for questions, Chair. So I think I will pause there, and very happy to take questions and comments.
Thank you, Councillor Rajwat. If I could start then with Councillor Mitchell's question, that'd be brilliant. Thank you.
Oh, there you are. Right. I was sitting for this, but not there. Good evening, everyone. On the delivery plan, I'm very grateful to Phil Walker for sending stuff about the safety valve, which is what my question's about. Obviously, Stephen knows from 2022, the written statement of action Ofsted send. We joined the safety valve, and according to Phil, we're ahead of our financial profile by £100,000, which is very encouraging. And this is due to reducing children attending non-maintained and expensive special schools, that sort of thing. I was just wondering, is there anywhere within that is an exemplar of good practice that we can note? And also, we hope to eliminate that deficit by 2028, which would be splendid. How confident are we that we'll do that? Thanks.
So if I may, Chair, I'll start and then pass over to Stephen for some of the detail, if that's all right. I mean, the safety valve program is something that, and the way the organisation have responded to it is something that I think I'm really, really proud of. I think there's an immense amount of work. It doesn't mean that the risk hasn't gone away just because we're ahead of profile. A lot can happen and it's very, very fluid. But certainly in terms of conversations I have with both the lead members and Stephen, is around the assurance that actually we are forecasting and we're sort of horizon scanning a little bit, looking at how the numbers are panning out. So as we sit here today, I always hate saying that I've got a high degree of confidence because you always worry about it. But actually, I've got confidence that the process is right, and that the conversations we're having with the DFE are absolutely right, and they're responding to what we're putting in, and they're understanding the process that we've gone through. I think it's really heartening that we're also, the actions on the written statement of action actually were completed ahead of time, which is also a real positive, and it really shows how seriously we as an organisation take it, both politically and at officer level. Would you like to come in on the detail that Councillor Mitchell spoke about?
I just think maybe just to reaffirm what the leader said, with all things people, because that's what I spend my time doing, I'm always 100% assured. But as we all know, it's all driven by individual needs. So it's not a case of just moving 20 children here. It's all driven by those individual needs. But within the overall mapping forward, as leader says, in terms of understanding our system, I am confident, we are ahead where we need to be, albeit a tiny amount in terms of a high needs block of about £70 million. 100,000 is not a huge amount, but we're ahead. And the most important thing, again, just mentioning what the leader said, is we have received the quarterly payments, because we send a quarterly report to DFE. And part of the safety valve deal is that if we deliver on target, we get the money that they have guaranteed to give us. And that was in total over the 5 years, 27 million. And we've received every single payment. In some respects, we've received most of them within 48 hours of submitting our return. So I have to take some assurance that the organisation monitoring us and handing money to us is assured that we're in the right place. I think then, probably just as the leaders invite me to do, picking up what you said, Councillor Mitchell, about good practice, I'm never one to crow about things. It's not in my nature. But I feel pressurized to have to say something. So I think fundamentally, a lot of work we've done, and it is reflecting what the DFE has shown interest in, is the mainstream inclusion partnerships that we created nearly 2 years ago, and that was after about 18 months of consultation engagement with schools. So the mainstream inclusion partnerships are fundamentally clustering all the mainstream schools, so not the specialist schools, into geographical clusters. There are 6 of those across the borough. What we did was give each of those clusters a allocation of money. And the idea of the mainstream inclusion partnerships is to seek to intervene with children as early as possible to turn around the habit we had in Hounslow of escalating as fast as possible to education, health and care plan assessment process. And where we're at the moment is we've seen over 700 children go through the mainstream inclusion partnerships, and very few education, health and care plans come out of that at the end of the time, which says that the schools working together, because that's the whole principle, is using their knowledge and expertise as clusters, have actually been able to do stuff with children in schools that have maintained them in school without us having to escalate up to the education, health and care plan. And that's what we'd want, and one of the other principles we've got within the Safety Valve programme of having an inclusive system, is that children aren't escalated up and out, that they're maintained within their school. We've got real ambitions this year and next year to turn the mainstream inclusion partnerships potentially into area inclusion partnerships. And that just sounds semantics. But that's actually about then beginning to say, well, actually, we want to include the nurseries and the early years in that process. We want to potentially extend that into some of our family hubs and family centres, so that actually we're catching the children even younger, because the mainstream inclusion partnerships have been based in primary schools and secondary schools. So we want to get in as early as possible. But we didn't want to do that until we'd managed to stabilise it with the mainstream inclusion partnerships. The DFE have shown significant interest in what we've done. And they've come back a number of times and asked us to explain how it operates, and actually are quite interested in us coming forward and talking to other local authorities about how we've done this. So I think out of something which was quite a challenge to us, which was not having a system that was inclusive and that did fundamentally escalate up and out, we're now being recognised, I think, as being a system that is inclusive. I'm cautious. I think we've got another 3 to 5 years to stabilise that. It's too early for me to say within 24 months that it's done, dusted and stabilised. We continue to have to work at it. But I am cheered, I think, by the engagement with the vast majority of schools across the borough in that process, and the engagement of the SEND coordinators within the schools and our own staff within that, and health staff as well. So it's been a real whole system collaboration. I think the other area, which is the next one we're moving on to, is preparation for adulthood. And we're about to open some new independence hubs, which is about trying to seek to get youngsters, when they're coming to that part where they're leaving education, into functional, useful activity within the community. Because one of the challenges within SEND education is an awful lot of emphasis on in-school activity, i.e. how do you support a youngster in school, with sometimes very little thought as a whole system about what happens after school. And that, I think, for parents is one of the biggest concerns about, there's a lot of activity, and rightly parents will often say to us, it feels like a battle, and it does sometimes, about getting the right support and understanding. But one of the big drop-offs was always what happens post 18, 21 and 25. So the independence hubs, and the first one will be opening soon in West Thames College, is about, in essence, putting investment into college development, so life skills learning, skills and development learning, that actually is about targeting youngsters into purposeful activity. Possibly, you might say, the word work. And that sometimes, I think, is quite a challenge for lots of parents who've got children with special educational needs, that work is a scary and frightening place. But I always will take the opportunity, because I met this year's new cohort of Project Search interns yesterday. 8 youngsters joined us for a year. I met them today in the front foyer when I went down to the coffee shop for a sandwich, and they are absolutely excited to be part of this programme this year. I did say to Nikki, who is a member of our team, who really committed to the whole concept of young people with special educational needs getting into education, that the cohort this year were really engaged in the conversation I had with them, and they were positive and excited today. And I look forward to, in a year's time, giving them their certificates and hopefully hearing that they've got jobs. And that's what we want to get out of the independence hubs, is more youngsters get the right support to get into work. And I think we'll be able to demonstrate, probably in about a year's time, those independent hubs are also a good practice thing. So a lot of good work going on by lots of colleagues across the system that actually are, I think, developing a really good and solid system. But it will take time. And it's not at the moment, where I will put my hand up, without its faults. I'm a realist. It's never 100% perfect, but it's a lot better, and it's showing some really good stuff that we should, I think, be rightly proud of as a whole system and as a local authority.
Brilliant, thank you. Any follow-up? Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you've answered that, Stephen. We do have an exemplar, as you said, the Mainstream Inclusion Partnerships and what it's led to and what it's doing. Just one very brief follow-up. If we do face choppier waters before 2028, what would be our contingency?
So within the safety valve programme, we built in an element of contingency, because again, you can predict broadly on demographic data how many children may or may not have a particular specialist educational need. But the reality is, it only takes a small handful of children with high need to incur additional costs. So for example, we have a number of children at the moment who are in private, independent, non-maintained sector, where, you know, we are paying £250,000 for school fees for a year. It doesn't take many of those children with that high needs to throw our plan off. So we built a degree of contingency, but ultimately it is about seeking to have that inclusive system where we have to minimise that use of that very expensive resource, because the average independent non-maintained school is about 100,000 a year, whereas our own special schools are around about the 30,000-40,000 a year. So we've done a piece of work within the Safety Valve programme about reprofiling the use of our own special schools to make sure we're targeting that resource. That hasn't come without having to invest some time and energy and money in upskilling and supporting those teaching staff and support staff to deal with much more complex behaviour. So that's, again, part of the whole process. So a little bit of it, Councillor Mitchell, is seeing what's happening, what's coming down the line, and reacting within the contingency and the flexibility we've got, because it's not as, back to what I said about people, it's not as you can say it now and in 5 years it will be exactly as you said it would be. It's about us having that flexibility.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Councillor Rajwat.
And just to supplement Stephen's response, which is absolutely right, By way of assurance, Councillor Chowdhury, as lead member, regularly, I know talks to Stephen about this because it is, it could go wrong if the demographics change. And as part of the budget process and as part of regular monitoring, I meet with Councillor Chowdhury every quarter, and this is a key line of inquiry for me in those conversations, just to understand how it's going.
Thank you. Councillor Yates, please.
Can you just confirm which schools are part of the inclusion partnership?
So all the non-special schools in the borough were invited to be part of the Mainstream Inclusion Partnership cluster for their area. So we just basically took all the schools, 80 odd schools, excluding the 6 special schools, and said, you can become a member of this partnership. I, as the DCS, have no legal right to say you will. It was by invitation. It was by an agreement with the schools. The working group that set up the principle was headed up by a number of head teachers from our own schools. At the moment, I think there are only 2 schools that haven't regularly participated. And we continue to encourage those schools to participate. But what we're planning on doing this year is deploying the special schools. Now we've done the work with them in terms of reprofiling a couple of those schools, is to bring them into the clusters as specialist advisors, because they have the knowledge that the mainstream schools need in terms of dealing with particularly challenging behaviours or particular educational support needs. So we're now beginning to say to the special schools, you need to make yourself available within those clusters to act as specialist advisors, because there's a lot of good expertise in our mainstream schools. So some of them have SEND centres, but they'd benefit from the special schools being available to them. We've also funded, through High Needs Block, a couple of specialist support teams that we have, who also would go into the mainstream inclusion partnerships and offer that support as well. But at the moment, I'm hopeful that most of the schools, if not all the schools, will actively participate by the end of this year.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And breathe. Yeah. So, is there any other questions that you want to pose with regards to the delivery plan? I've got a couple. So this is really within place portfolio. So can you elaborate the community energy and infrastructure supported by financial models? What is actually happening and what's happening over sort of the coming years?
I'll take that one. So this links to the delivery of the priorities under our Climate Emergency Action Plan. One of the key areas we're working in there is around how we influence a reduction in wider borough emissions, linking through to the national target around getting to net zero by 2050. So we're exploring at the moment, following cabinet approval back in January, how we pull together a delivery model to look at how we can do that. So how can we bring in and secure billions of pounds worth of private sector investment to deliver that wider borough decarbonisation. We're actually planning to bring a report to Cabinet this side of Christmas that will produce the recommendation for that, and therefore thereafter we will take that forward. One of the things we're looking at as part of that is the district heat network, which Cabinet approved us to make a green heat network fund bid in February. That's local energy, that's using waste heat from Mogden sewage works to create a heat network, initially within about 8 kilometres of the borough of pipe work, but potentially spreading to the whole of the borough and even as far as and into Heathrow Airport. So massive infrastructure projects, massive benefits there that will deliver, zero carbon, but actually really importantly, deliver growth. Because the scale of the investment will mean we will have jobs coming into the borough. Residents will benefit. If we can do this, it's cheaper to heat homes. We've got warmer homes because we've insulated them. So although the decarbonisation is really key, that's why we started it, actually the benefits of that to residents are enormous beyond the net zero, the climate emergency side of things. So then as it links into that community energy and storage infrastructure, some of the components of delivering that net zero for the wider borough is about being able to generate within areas. So can we roll out solar panels, for example? Can we put battery storage in place? That actually reduces the pressure on the grid. The grid is constrained in West London, And actually, it's on the corporate risk register around the grid constraints in West London. So if we can generate locally, we can do microgrids. I know others are trialing things like microgrids that enables us to do that and create that net zero and that lower energy system, which enables us to move to that net zero place and those wider benefits, which is obviously key.
Oh, that's brilliant. Thank you very much for that, Andrew. I do have another question. This is now under digital. So are we recruiting cybersecurity officers to consider threats domestic and foreign?
So, Chair, I'll probably start and then hand over to Andrew to elaborate. So, one of the changes within the Directorate was to bring resilience and contingency planning much closer to digital under one director. So you had that visibility because we acknowledge that cybersecurity is a key thing and possibly one of the largest threats we actually face as a council in terms of the amount of data that we process and the security around that. So we have to be really cognizant of that. To the best of my knowledge, and Andrew might correct me on this, I don't think the issue is around recruiting officers, because I think we've got some expertise within the teams. It's about being really cognizant to it. So every now and then someone from the team will message me and go, "Did you try and log in from Russia today?" And that's a genuine thing, but it just shows me that things are working, and I know the organisation does go through rigorous testing, so it doesn't sit with digital. Actually, the whole organisation and members won't know it, but they are also tested as well regularly. I'm the only one that knows. But you know, it just shows how seriously we take it. I mean, Andrew, do you want to come in on some of the detail?
Yeah, so that kind of really covers it, but we're always working to monitor evolving threats, understand what mitigations we need to take to deal with them, manage them. So that might be recruiting more officers, but more often than not, it would be communications across the organisation, more cyber training, reviewing our technology as well. So we've got multiple levels of technology monitoring for unusual events, mitigating those by isolating devices on the network if there was a problem, or alerting us if there's an issue with an officer's account. So that's how we're managing that at the moment.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And any sort of questions from Councillor Mitchell?
It's just a quick one for Andrew Cox. Yeah. In the report, we mentioned 20 air quality sensors at schools in Felton, which we're very keen on. Could you just very briefly tell us who collates the information they gather and who would then act upon it? Thank you.
Yes, so the sensors installed through the climate emergency and environmental strategy team, which is part of my division. So that's work we do. They collect the data, they monitor the data, and they monitor the data across all of our sensor network across the borough, which is a KPI that gets reported through in the quarterly performance monitoring as well. Obviously, then if there are things that are of concern, we will act upon those. We've also got a program where actually we have small but significant capital budgets where we can put in measures in schools to address, air quality and other things in their environment. So, for example, I know recently we were talking about a school where they've looked at it where it is, and we're putting in a hedge. Now, if that hedge improves the environment but supports the air quality by shielding it from the main road, and so there's an active program of working with schools to look at those opportunities and put those measures in to support them, because obviously the air quality is good for the health of children, actually helps their learning as well if you've got better air quality. So it's a big rounded program of work.
Any other questions from members? This is kind of a two-part question. I'm going to try and, just for the constraints on time. So we used to have sort of RAG ratings with what's been done in DRIPA and what hasn't been done, what we're looking for the future. And I guess for me, it kind of ties in what we've done in 22 to 26 and for the future of 26 to 30. Was there any particular reason why we don't have sort of RAG rate, or do we not? Because our report didn't have it. And are we looking for that in the future as well?
So apologies, it wasn't in this version. The version that goes to cabinet, which I think is a little bit more detailed, does still have the RAG rating. Plus, we follow what has been delivered and what is yet to be delivered, and the action plan that flows with that. So we'll take that back as feedback for the next time we come back to you. But it does exist, and just to be really clear, it's not about greenwashing everything. You know, it's about being really honest and open about how we're doing.
So a report did show that we did, you know, there's lots there. There's lots there that we've done, which is really encouraging. But we used to have sort of, yes, this has been done, this is achieved, this project, we're moving on to this project now. So it was quite nice. The members did sort of like that sort of layout. But yes, we'll kind of note it as one of the recommendations going forward, which is just.
I mean, just to complete that, the links that were included in the report on this go directly to the report, which is RAG rated. But if you want a condensed version of that, we're happy to do that. That's fine.
Yeah, thank you for that. Is there any other questions with the plan? Okay, so we move now to sort of discussing. So this is members now just discussing what you've heard, what you've seen in the delivery plan, what you've seen on the report. So is there? I'll just sort of bring it back. So the points we're sort of looking at today is just scrutinise the approach of the delivery of the council's priorities through the delivery plan 22-26, utilising the One Housing PPM approach, and of course identify opportunities for change and improvements in the approach to adopted for the adoption of the delivery plan 2630. So I mean, is there anything coming from committee on this? Maybe steer it to maybe 2630 going into what priorities are going to be in 26. Could that be something as delivery plan as part of our recommendations? Yeah.
Hello, yeah, other Andrew, yeah. I'm very interested in the assistive technology. And it's mentioned early stage dementia as one of the key things, and about people and how they're affected in the community. Do we have a sort of timeline for this? And how is that connected? How will you connect that to health, our health program, carers, pilot schemes? I think that should be part of the work that goes forward, part of the wider health program. But that assistive technology, a little focus on that. Anything on that, Andrew? Thank you.
Yes, we are working on some assistive technology. We've put in a bid for some additional funding to reduce the pressure on the council budgets to deliver that. We'll be piloting around 150 devices. So they are Alexa type devices with some additional software and configuration that goes in on top. And there's also a service provided by by people who are accessible through the Alexa device. It enables the resident to be reminded about taking medication, taking a drink, the things that might affect someone with early onset dementia. And there's also monitoring for activity in the home. So if that person leaves the home, their contacts can be alerted that they've left the home, and they can be collected. So the pilot will review the effectiveness of the devices and the service that we're trialing. If it proves to be effective and delivers some savings and better outcomes for the residents, then we'll look to expand that offer to a larger cohort of residents across the borough.
Thank you for that. Councillor Rajwa, please.
Thank you, Chair. And to the broader point, Councillor Mitchell, looking forward thinking. Hopefully, we are still the administration post 26. That's the only political thing I'm going to say this evening. AI has massive opportunities. It presents massive opportunities. So, like Andrew said, but a small example of how you can bring AI into efficiency. Our social workers use Copilot to make notes, and actually, that's that trial's gone live, has it? Is that right? Yeah, Magic Notes. Sorry, Magic Notes. I beg your pardon, not Copilot. But using AI to really make that process of assessment as efficient as possible. We're also in a trial at the moment with a provider whose name slips me in Thames Water to use AI and technology on water pipes to try and detect leaks early, so that you can address those before they become major issues. Okay, that may help Thames Water more than it will help us, but it has a benefit for residents. So, Mark Lumley, who's the director, having a leading role in the London Office of Technology and Innovation, Lottie, as well as the work that the whole digital team are doing about that forward thinking, means that you can deploy digital in as simple a thing as high street furniture to really measure outcomes, measure air quality, connectivity, all of that stuff. So, it's an area where we need to get our heads around it because it is so vast, but it is an area that provides massive opportunity. And actually, because we've been thinking about transformation in a much more holistic way, we've given ourselves the headroom to be able to think about that innovation. Whereas, no criticism to colleagues in near councils or councils across London, that innovation, that space for thinking just isn't there, and it provides massive opportunities for the future.
Thank you for that, Councillor Rajwa. Councillor Moty, please.
Thanks. I had some questions that related to how the council spends Section 106 money and SIL money. The context is at my area forum, this is a frequent topic of discussion in Brentford. To give you the top line is, general perception that money is generated in some parts of Hounslow and spent in others. So my first question is a plea for some general, what the general thinking is around the distribution of that money. And then the second one is how the council plans on letting people feel like they are part of the value that's been generated in their community, and what that plan is going forward.
So, needless to say, Councillor Mosley, I didn't necessarily agree with some of the views that were expressed at your area forum, although I'm aware of them. But I suppose I do take them seriously because they are important. That is money that is generated in one part of the borough. There is a distinction between sometimes Section 106 and SIL that we need to be aware of. Section 106 often has very specific uses within certain areas. Very little of that becomes part of the sort of general funding pot. And actually what I've found, certainly in terms of budget monitoring and that sort of capital process monitoring, it's not a case that money isn't spent, it's that it takes a longer time to spend, because sometimes those are long-term projects. And I fully accept the point that we need to make that distinction and provide visibility on that. And that's something that both Councillor Bruce and I discuss quite regularly. SIL that is raised within an area will generally go back into that area. I have to say, it's not always on projects that are highly visible and that can be spoken about. I mean, if we're repairing a bit of pavement, I'm not going to shout and put out a leaflet to all residents saying, look, your SIL money has been spent here, but it does benefit. A proportion of the SIL money, what we call neighbourhoods SIL, does get centralised, and it's a smaller proportion than the general SIL intake, and that does get spent across the borough. And I think that is the right approach, because that is on a bidding process. So the Thriving Communities Fund is how it manifests itself predominantly in both revenue and capital terms. So capital up to £300,000, revenue much smaller, but on a case-by-case basis. And that's based on applications. And that just acknowledges that actually, those that are applying for it very rarely work in small areas. They will work across the borough and have the biggest impact. And there is an impact report that is produced on that. On the major sort of capital bids, that has visibility, that goes to Cabinet. and there is a bidding process. And look, it does depend on what comes along year on year. So that fund, the amount in the fund does fluctuate year on year. So sometimes it is very difficult to give it to everyone that applies, even though we would love to in a normal year allocate to everyone. Sometimes we have to be really, really strategic on it, and also where there's a chance on a bigger project that that funding will allow leverage from other funding. So, for example, we allocated some SIL money to West Middlesex Hospital for their new ambulatory centre. Well, that was on the basis that our money wouldn't pay for that, but it leveraged money from the NHS and other partners coming forward to allow something that would benefit the whole community. So, it's very easy to fall into that narrative of, if it's generated in Heston, it will stay in Heston. But actually, we need to look at how we can benefit residents in Heston and across the borough using what are limited funds, and what is ring fenced absolutely will get spent. But sometimes it takes a little bit longer to do.
Is that okay? Yeah, thank you for that, Councillor Rajwat. Okay, so we've got to move on to the recommendations. Is there any other questions before? Is everyone still sort of happy with the delivery plan as is, but also in the future as well? Okay. So I'm just going to put in a few bits here. So fantastic. I think we've done absolutely brilliant with the work so far for this 22 to 26. Clearly, we can see what's going to be happening with 26-30 going ahead with some of that bigger projects, infrastructure projects. I love that. Absolutely fantastic. So with the recommendations, just continue the efforts to deepen inclusion educational approach. Continue grips on the programs and projects to deliver improvements right across the borough. So this is authority to sort of consider further technology approaches to improve the borough. And of course, we'll welcome these updates in 26, 27. Is that okay with all committee members? Yeah, can I have a seconder? Thank you. And just a vote on it. Yeah, thank you very much. That is all the recommendations. Brilliant. Okay, so firstly, thank you, Councillor Rajwat, Andrew. Thank you for your time this evening. So important to have a good conversation. How the delivery plan can ensure the council is on track to deliver various savings and improvements to the service. You are, of course, welcome to stay. Thank you. But if you do wish to leave, you can, of course, leave at this time. But thank you so much. All right, brilliant. So we move on to agenda item number 4. So this is a big one. So support for our unpaid carers. At the Borough Council earlier this week, we debated the state of the borough. Our regular assessment of life in Hounslow. Ahead of that debate, I recall reading almost 20,000 Hounslow residents are unpaid carers, with some 5,000 or more provided over 50 hours of care each week. These are significant figures that suggest significant demand on local people. Indeed, many of us tonight in this room, or even watching online, will become carers at some point in our lives. Carers are torn between looking after their loved ones and looking after themselves in the borough like Hounslow. The financial and health impacts of being a carer are not insignificant. And help for carers as well as help for those they care for are both important. Today's item looks at the support the council provides to carers, in particular the carers service that launched in the summer and will continue to develop over the coming months. We are asked to note the support that is provided by the London Borough of Hounslow to unpaid carers via the Hounslow Carers Service, review the support that is on offer, and to provide comment on the new Hounslow Carers Service that is currently being deployed across Hounslow. The first recommendation is to note this isn't really the sort of recommendation we like, but we will, I'm sure, happily review the support that is on offer, as well as new carer services being introduced across the borough. To help us understand this initiative better, we are joined by Stephen Forbes. So we've already got sort of Stephen here as well, and we've got Kim Stady as well, Head of Quality Assurance and Development. Welcome both. So Stephen, if I can ask you to just introduce your report, thank you.
So first thing I will do is pass on apologies from Councillor Bath. She regrets she's unable to be here, and she would have wanted to, I think, probably say a couple of words, so she's probably left that to me. So I think just to reflect to what you said, Chair, you know, the role of being a family carer, not paid in terms of being part of your job, is quite a substantial challenge. It's one that over my years of working in adult social care, which are some 30 plus, near 40, but actually people choose to do it, and they want to do it well. What they choose to do is frequently, I think, as you said, Chair, put their own health second. And it's not about us seeking to offer to replace, because my experience over the years tells me that's not what people want, but it is able to offer them the support and the understanding of their role. It was for us as a department, when we were preparing for our inspection from the Care Quality Commission for Adult Social Care, when we did our sort of self-assessment, it was one of the areas we felt there was an opportunity for us to do a bit more. Our general offer was probably not as good and robust as it could be. So in that preparation, when we looked at what we could do with the resources we've got, we developed a plan. CQC came along, did their inspection, looked at where we were at, looked at the plan, said that looks substantial. So we're now, in essence, in a position to implement that plan. That's what Kim will roughly take you through in terms of this first stage of the service. So I'll be quiet at this point and hand over to Kim for the next 5-10 minutes.
Thank you. As Stephen's already said, the support for unpaid carers it's everyone's business, and what we've tried to really do is look at how we can provide as much support across lots of different places and spaces. The work itself belongs to the health and wellbeing agenda, and we're tracking it quite firmly through that process. Just to confirm that the service has been went live in June. And since that point, what we've been doing is really building on the work that public health started. So public health, post-COVID, really worked with a big chunk of our unpaid carers to understand how they were, where they were at, what they were feeling, and what services they wanted to see more of. So from that, what we've actually done is really analysed what people have said and built the plan based on people's feedback. So what you will see is that we've got a 2-stage plan in effect that we're looking at. So some of the services already existed, but we've actually just tried to pull everything into one space so that actually we just have one service, and it becomes easier for people to actually navigate rather than having lots of different things in different places. So we have started we have short break service for people that require it, and a respite provision. So we have beds available for respite within our council-run care homes, and that's something that unpaid carers can access when they need it. We have daycare provision. So we have a daycare provision that runs at Sandbanks, which is over in Feltham. And we have Harlington Care that provides some of those services for us also. We've also just launched some carers cafes across the borough. So we've currently got 4 locations that those run, and there's a carers cafe once a week. And the idea of those cafes is for people to come together. Sometimes it's not always about a traditional service that people need. Sometimes it's about coming together to talk to other people in similar positions. So we're trying to provide spaces to do that. We've run some with in partnership with Lambton 360. So actually we've tried to really look at the wellbeing offer that we've got, and actually just provide carers with some much needed support when it comes to their wellbeing. We've also got we've got carers hubs that we've set up where people can come for information and advice about general services for the people that they support and themselves. We have aligned those with the community hubs. So as the community hubs are running, there is the carers hub in the service as well. So actually anyone walking into the community hubs has access to that. We've also been looking at and working with our unpaid carers around actually we want to continue tracking the quality of services that we provide, and we want to hear the voice of carers all the time. So we're looking at a carers voice group, and actually, you know, that's due to launch next month. So actually that will give, again, a forum for carers to come together and tell us about services, what they want to see more, and so forth. So that's something else that's coming online as of next month. We've also got some support groups that run across the borough. We're trying to look at the different elements of what it is to be a carer. So we're trying to look at actually if somebody's caring for somebody at their end of life, actually how we provide more support and spaces to talk about end-of-life care and what that potentially means, as well as actually new carers coming on board. So actually somebody that may have just started that journey. We've also done some work around just recognising, because not everyone recognises that they're a carer also. So actually it's really important that there's a clear message out there around caring for somebody, and actually, you know, just really emphasising the offer and the support that is out there. We do work with the voluntary sector. We've worked with Brentford Young Carers as well to look at the youth offer and how we can best support young carers. And actually, we are always kind of continuing to build our offer with health also. So it's really, it has to be a collective effort from everybody. I think everybody has a part to play when it comes to supporting unpaid carers in one way or another. We are just developing at the moment a training offer, and I say a training offer, it's more an offer of support for practicalities of when you are a carer. So we're working with health and occupational therapy at the moment to look at actually best ways to support yourself when you're bending and actually, you know, doing that manual handling side of care, as well as other elements. So we're putting together a whole offer around actually the practicalities of being a carer, and that will launch shortly. The other thing that we're doing is we're really just we've got an offer, an information advice offer, but again we're just building on what that looks like at the moment, and just really trying to pull all the services across the system and the borough together, so that all of that information advice is in one space and place for people. So there's lots happening at the moment around the unpaid carers offer, and it's something that we continue to develop and grow as we go forward. I think it's really important to note that the team that have come together are experienced. They're a team of 5 in total. And they're there to really support people through their journey in a really individual way, rather than, you know, actually just having the generic offers. So alongside this, what you see there, our unpaid carers officers do work with people on a one-to-one basis, and actually the whole idea of this is to try and tailor the offer to what people need. And again, with that voice group, we'll continue to listen to people and build and grow and develop as we move forward.
Thank you very much. Very, very in depth for that report, Kim. So thank you. I'm going to move into the questioning now. If I can ask Councillor Farmerhand, please.
Thank you, Chair. I have a very brief question. Carers are important. Can you elaborate on how this support can make a tangible difference? Thank you.
I think just to reflect on what Kim laid out there is there's a lot of different dimensions to being a carer. There's your own self-care, your own health, your own mental well-being and health, getting to grips potentially with the loss of a loved one through either end-of-life care or, in the case of dementia, watching a loved one fade away over years and not having that relationship you might have relied on. Mostly, I think, as I said, Councillor, it's not about carers saying to us that they want to be replaced. But when you have probably, and I will recall, I used to work for Alzheimer's Scotland when I was an awful lot younger and supported lots of people who were caring for people with dementia. If you've been awake for 4 nights on the trot, had 1 hour sleep, and can't have a conversation with your husband that you used to have, your ability to survive being the carer the next day is really challenged. And sometimes, as Kim says, just being able to lift the phone or go somewhere and say, to be honest, I've had enough, is enough frequently to get people through the next day and the next day. The feeling of isolation is the worst thing for any carer, that they are there on their own. And actually that's what we're trying to offer here, is not a replacement, but that you know there's a place you can go to if you're at that point where actually you think you can no longer cope, because most family carers want to cope, but it's the times that they feel they can't is the worst points for them, those points of emotional crisis rather than physical crisis. Hopefully being able to pick a phone up, go to a carer cafe, go to a support group, meet someone who else is doing the same thing as you, and have a, if they make a relationship between each other and they phone each other, great. That supports people, and I think that's what we're trying to offer.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Mitchell, can I ask you for your questions, please?
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, good point that Kim made. Very often people, they don't see themselves as carers. If there's a need in the family, you step up and you do what's necessary. I think there's a few of us around this table that have had that experience. You don't see yourself as a special subject or a category. You simply do it. So it's great that we're moving this work forward. Yeah, I think it's excellent, beyond excellent. Yeah, I've got a couple of questions. And it's Stephen again, it's the WSOA. Given the success of our response to that, the Written Statement of Action 2022, and the success in dealing with the action points within it, therein, are there any lessons learned that could usefully inform support for unpaid carers? And especially in regard to identifying, supporting and working with unpaid carers, including young carers, which could enhance the offer moving forward as a template. Is there anything we've learned from that positive experience that we can see potential issues in advance and say, yeah, let's do that? Yeah, that's my first one, and I'll come back with one more.
I think, Councillor Mitchell, probably in terms of particularly young carers, but the biggest challenge in terms of young carers is not being identified as caring. And then the long-term impact on future adult life. So if you are, doing 4 or 5 hours of care at home, supporting mum or dad, and then caring for siblings, your ability to do things like school homework, participate in social activity with your friends, make friend connections that don't impinge on your caring habits, all of that has an absolute long-term impact on childhood development. So probably about 15 years ago, when the agenda of young carers became quite a high national thing, we tended in services to say, well, technically a young carer meets the threshold of being a child in need. And whilst we have a whole mechanism to deal with children in need, I much prefer that we take a less formalised approach to supporting a young carer. Because what you won't do for a young carer is eliminate the desire to care. Most young carers, 7 or 8-year-old children, will want to help mum or dad. It's that love bond between parent and child. So trying to go in there and mitigate against, in essence, is not the right way to do it. What you want to do is support, but make sure what isn't happening for that child is that their future development and opportunities are being disadvantaged by lack of schooling, lack of learning, lack of concentration, all those matters that impinge on their ability to develop and grow. That's why we'd classify them potentially as a child in need. So it's taking a much more supportive approach rather than a technical child protection approach. I think hopefully that makes sense without being too technical.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just backing up on that, is there any work within the programme to identify young carers? Does any of that there with schools or groups like Perfectly Imperfect that could identify children that could be entitled to support? But given what Stephen said, is that aspect in our programme so that we can step in there too?
Yeah, I mean, as Kim said, it's part of the awareness bit. It's, you know, if you don't recognise you're a carer, and we would predominantly talk about adults about not recognising themselves as carers, but if you're a 7-year-old, yeah. So if you do, then it's a bit about, there's a, you know, on our website, there's a route to getting that kind of support. We are working, as Kim said, with voluntary organisations. I would hope if a child pops up in front of a teacher looking like they're tired because they might be caring, or they're going to a voluntary organisation and they're picking up, they're caring for mum or dad, that someone would, in essence, point them in the right direction.
Thank you. Councillor Yates, please. Yep.
Sorry, just picking up on young carers. I think siblings with special needs also need this support. So I know in primary school in Bedfont that they have young carers where children can go and just spend some time on their own. I'm just thinking, is there any way that you could implement maybe some education around that and some support? Because it's okay just going and having to play for an hour, but I think them learning about the child's disability and learning how to communicate at home would be really beneficial. Also going back to what you were saying, Kim, I'm a carer as well, so I know how tough it can be. Just wondering, with all the research that you've done, how you reached the carers, how many you spoke to get to the point where you're at?
Yeah, really, there's been quite a lot of work in the background. I think we ran 112 listening groups with carers, unpaid carers, to really understand and unpick where those individuals were at. There was an online forum as well, and we've done telephone conferences with unpaid carers as well. So there's been a mix of information. We also have a statutory, in adult social care, we have a statutory unpaid carers survey that goes out every year. So we've kind of picked from the unpaid carers survey that goes out also. So it's been a combination of lots of different areas and things that we've done to get to the point. And I think, as I alluded to earlier, it won't ever stop. It will be ongoing. We want to hear from people. There will always be a mechanism and a way for people to feed back to us so that we can continue to develop and grow what people need from a service.
Okay, and how are we advertising these new services?
So again, there's a mix of ways that's happening. So there's a WhatsApp group, an unpaid carers WhatsApp group. It goes out. There's a unpaid carers newsletter that goes out on Thrive. There's Care Place. There's the website. There's an adult social care pop-up shop that travels around weekly the borough, and that has information around some of the unpaid carer services as well, and also the unpaid carers advisors are out on the pop-up shop. So we've got things like the borough-based partnership where we advertise the services as well. So there's lots of different routes and places that it's advertised.
What I would say, Councillor Yates, is in order to defeat Kim's sterling work is we can never communicate enough.
No.
So what, and I would say that to Councillor Bath and to Councillor Chowdhury and the leader as well. We the service can talk about it. We can make it on a website. I would encourage all of you to talk about it as well, because there will be, we've got about 19,000 recognised carers, and there's probably more than that. The people who don't recognise themselves as a carer or doing caring activity. So the more conversation you can have in churches, mosques, temples, religious groups, community groups, you name it, more conversation. One of the things that, going back to something Councillor Mitchell said, one of the things that frustrates me frequently, particularly in the SEND area, is when parents of children with special educational needs are asked, do you know where the council's local offer is? Vast majority say no. And the local offer is a requirement for us to publicise what's available for families with special education needs. We've completely revamped the local offer on our website. It's there. I can send you the links to it now. But frequently parents are asked and they don't know where it is. But we're dealing with potentially 6,000 children with special educational needs plus. That's 6,000 times 2 potentially parents, 12,000 people and grandparents and extended family, and lots of those people don't know where the local offer information is. So the more you can talk about it in general conversation, hopefully but we'll never stop having to talk about it, because there's always going to be someone. GPs are meant to have a conversation with people about their caring roles. There's a GP register for carers. But lots of people go in and out their GP practices and never say to the GP, I actually am caring for my husband or my daughter or whoever. So constant conversation about it is the best opportunity.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Stephen. There's just a couple of bits from me, I guess. Have we made use of partnership expertise to shape this offer?
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. As I've alluded to and said throughout, it's not an adult social care, it's a collective effort of lots of different partners, voluntary sector, carers themselves. So actually it's a combination of everybody together that's really drawn and help develop what we do have on offer.
Brilliant, thank you for that. The only other sort of question for me is that, yes, we've been sort of speaking to the carers of what they want, excuse me, as a bit of a kind of respite. Is there something that maybe they've missed or maybe we can add? I'll give you an example. I mean, I wouldn't mind it as a carer. Maybe a weekend away in Spa. Is that an offer?
And I'm mindful of the leader sitting beside me. This is where I get a bit technical. So in terms of what would support someone in a caring role, it's without limit. I mean, there is no definition of the one thing. It might be conversation. It might be going in a spa. Our statutory legal obligation, because it did come in the Care Act in 2014, it was one of the biggest changes, is that carers are entitled to assessment in their own right. So before the Care Act, you were assessed as a carer caring for someone. In the Care Act, you have a right. Anybody could walk in the front of Hounslow House tomorrow and say to reception, I am a carer, I want to be assessed. We have to assess them on their own role. We don't even have to have access to the individual. So if they come on and say, I want to be assessed as a carer, but I do not want you to speak to the person I'm caring for, we still then have to assess them on that basis. And there is an eligibility criteria in the Care Act for a carer. It's subtly different for the cared for person. And ultimately, without going into technical detail of that, we are duty bound to determine whether or not they have support needs in their own right as a carer. And if we identify they have support needs, we're duty bound to meet those needs. We can meet those needs in lots of different ways. And frequently what we do is meet the needs of the carer by meeting the needs of the cared for individual. So the carer says, I need respite. I'd like to go to a spa. We'd say we can provide you with respite by providing the cared for person with respite in one of our residential homes. And that may not be the choice they have, but then I can legally say that meets your needs. We're not offering, because ultimately we could get into some very unusual arrangements. So I have a duty within the Care Act to ensure that the local authorities' resources are used effectively to meet the needs of people who act as carers. Effectively means sometimes having to say, we can meet your needs this way, but not the way you choose or think it will be met. So there's a subtlety there that, but you know, if you want to say that you would like to go to a spa, I'll hear it, Chair. Might not deliver it in that way.
And that's really the point, isn't it? I mean, if somebody just says, look, you know, I'm really down and I need some help, we're going to do our legal obligation. But there's, of course, there's limits to that. Yeah. Okay. That is it, I believe, from me and questions. Is there any other question from anyone else? Councillor, oh, all right, we got to Councillor Hindermeyer first, please.
Thank you, Chair. Just a question. If an individual doesn't have a capacity to make their own decisions, understand there is LPA is required. So how carers take care of that individual in that gap, and what services are we providing to the carer to gain LPA? And without going to solicitors, and is there any service as council we are providing to the carers? Because it's very technical when it comes to lasting power of attorney. So what service are we providing to the carers?
Okay, without getting into the depths of all the technicality, I could give Kim lasting a power of attorney over my affairs when I am competent and capable of doing so. You can't do it when you are not competent and capable. So it has to be done in advance. It's limited in terms of an interpretation of what my intent was. It does not give that individual carte blanche to do what they feel is appropriate. It is very specific. The reality is that most people don't actually put LPAs in place, because most human beings, most of us, really don't want to think about the realities of our future life, if we're being honest. So what we frequently find, and it is, you know, the vast majority of carers are elderly spouses caring for their spouse, their loved one, a sister, a brother. It's predominantly caring is done by 50 pluses or daughters and sons caring for mothers. That's the majority. What we frequently find are people who have progressed into not having capacity, where the loved one, family member, is providing care. Just because you are the next of kin gives you no legal authority whatsoever over the welfare affairs or the financial affairs of your loved one. It has no legal status. The only place you can go is the Court of Protection. So you can approach the Court of Protection to seek deputyship in terms of over someone in two phases. You can have Court of Protection appointed responsibility for financial affairs, and you can have court appointed responsibility for health and welfare, and you can have both. So you can have them separately or both. If none of that happens, then we as a local authority under current legislation have the responsibility to take what's called best interest decisions on behalf of people without capacity. And we do that through the provisions of the Mental Capacity Act. So if we come across someone who's been cared for, someone who hasn't got court-appointed responsibility for them and doesn't have an LPA, we have to intervene at that point with the family to do a structured and formal approach to making best interest decisions. And there's a whole load of code of practice about how we do that. We can, as a local authority, we feel it appropriate, actually go to the Court of Protection to either overturn an appointed deputy if we do not think they're acting in the individual's best interest, either intentionally or otherwise, or where we feel that it is very unclear as to whether or not someone has capacity or not. In fact, we were in court of protection today on behalf of someone in West Mids Hospital, where between ourselves, the NHS Trust, and us, we cannot determine whether or not this individual is making capacitated decisions about our care. So rather than make a wrong judgment, because the Mental Capacity Act works on the assumption that we have to assume capacity, we've gone to court to say, you need to give us, on the basis of the evidence we've given you, you need to give us a judgment as to how we deal with this elderly woman's care. And that's it kind of in a nutshell, but there's a lot more complexities underneath that. But I would seriously always say to family members, if in doubt, court of protection. Do not assume as a next of kin that you have legal rights, because you technically don't when it comes to health and welfare.
Thank you for that. Very quickly, because everyone wants, so very quickly, Councillor Mitchell, and then I'm going to go to Farman.
Okay, yeah. 5.1 in the report mentions risk, the risk of higher demand outstripping staff availability. I don't think in the notes we had there's anything there about mitigation. This is going to be successful, I think. Any mitigation if the demand is so great? Maybe we can't meet the demand in terms of staff.
The simple solution there would be prioritisation.
Yeah.
It's in everything we have to do. We would have to prioritise those individuals in most need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you, Councillor Farman.
Thank you, Chair. After the assessment, do you provide any training to the unpaid carer?
Through the formal adult social care route of assessing a carer's needs, if it was felt that one of the things that would help them would be training in, I don't know, caring for someone with dementia, then we'd look to potentially meet that need. But I think the stuff that Kim was talking about, which is just general offer, doesn't need an assessment. We're going to make that open door. So if you're a carer and you feel you could benefit from a bit of knowledge on how to do moving and handling, we'll run those training courses. There'll be stuff online. None of that requires an assessment.
No.
Assessment is a very formal route under the legislation. Accessing support doesn't need assessment. But eligible support, and I sound awfully technical again, that we will pay for, does require assessment.
Councillor Sidhu.
Thank you. How often are people coming to these cafes, and are they getting all the information packs while they're there about all the different services you're doing?
Yeah, so we've just started the cafes. There's one a week at the moment, and we're looking at increasing that, but we're also in the community hubs as well. So it's obviously dependent on the footfall. We do advertise that we're there. As I was saying earlier, we've got the WhatsApp group and so forth that all goes out on. We have seen over the last 2 months to date 105 referrals in to the unpaid carer service. So obviously that is increasing with time.
Sorry, just a follow-up. When you give the referrals, are you giving them all the information about these cafes and
Yes,
the rest? But
yeah.
Okay, thank you.
No, that's really good. I've taken in a very short space of time. Councillor Yates, please.
Sorry, just a quick follow on to that question. Where are the cafes at the moment?
We have one in Lumpton, Parkside. So we run a cafe there. There's one in Feltham. One, I can send you the details and locations of them. And we have one in Brentford at the moment. We're looking to start a new one in Chiswick with the independent cinema. So we're looking at an afternoon tea, a movie. So that's something that we'll be running with the independent cinema in Chiswick shortly.
Oh, I like the movie. Let's go for a movie. I like that.
So, I mean, just to pick up on that, Chair, and that is why the cafe thing sometimes sounds a little bit unusual. But one of the things that in all the 30 odd years I've been doing this, one of the things that family carers will say is the lack of normality in the caring role. It's really difficult to engage in things like going to the cinema, going out to the shops, if what you've got is someone who is highly dependent on you for every moment of the day. So actually, the benefit of the cafes is they're not us, they're not services, they're not assessment, they're not structure, they're just a place to go where actually, whether or not your husband might be asking 7 times every second what time it is and can we go home, is that there's a welcoming approach, and you actually might just get a cup of coffee, potentially a bit of a chat, read a newspaper, and nobody has to worry. Lots of family carers, particularly with people with dementia, are very, very embarrassed, anxious about what they're having to deal with on a day-to-day basis, and they feel really uncomfortable sometimes about being in the normal public space. So going for a movie is something that lots of carers just don't get to do for years. Yeah. You know, I will always recall when I first qualified and worked for Alzheimer's Scotland, we had a woman used to come to our day centre 3 times a week. Bina was her name. And I remember sitting down talking to her husband, and her husband had eaten mince and potatoes for 4 years, 7 days a week, twice a day, because that's all she could remember to cook. And he was so loving of his wife that he never challenged her. And what we used to do was say, come and pick her up at lunchtime, not 3:30, and come and have lunch with us. Because we will make sure on those days, not mince and potatoes.
Oh, that's brilliant. Look, so just I'm sure we could talk about this all day, and it's a brilliant. I think it's absolutely fantastic that we're giving this offer. It is newly involved, and already we've got great support for it. I've just got a couple of things with recommendations, as long as a panel agrees. So, I would love for you to consider coming back to scrutiny. Looking at sort of next year, see how it's gone, to support you with any sort of further sort of developments in that, because it is very new, and I'm sure there'll be always something I'm sure we can do, and just expanding those sort of efforts and finding support for young carers through the carer service as well. So. That those are sort of the recommendations. Is there any others from committee members? That's fine. Thank you. Do I have a seconder? Yep. And just vote. Yeah, happy with all that. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Okay, of course, that is all done. So look, so thank you, Stephen. Thank you, Kim, for being here. Of course, you're more than welcome to stay if you wish, but if you do want to jot off, you can. No problem at all. All right, thank you. Okay, so we just ready to sort of move on to the next item, really. So this is agenda item number 6. This is what we call the forward plan. Moving on, the forward plan sets out information about decisions the council intends to make over the coming weeks. The committee can now review the council's forward plan and consider if there are decisions it would like to bring in future of OSC. Having reviewed the forward plan, are there topics you'd like to consider? If there are, I'll ask officers to investigate and how these might be brought back to committee. So this is just for, of course, committee members. No. If everyone's okay, then we sort of move forward, really, with the forward plan, with the agenda. So next item is agenda item number 7. This is our work program. So we now turn to the work programming. The committee developed the work program at the beginning of the municipal year. It is good practice to keep that document under review. It is a live document after all. Members have before them the current work program detailing changes since we met in June to scope the draft. You will notice that our planned engagement with the NHS partners will now take place later this municipal year. Changes in senior leadership in the local NHS means we'll be inviting the NHS partners to a future meeting rather than hearing it that we were supposed to do today. I can also confirm Wednesday, 22nd of October is the date of scrutiny in the day session. More than welcome to come. Everyone's more than welcome to come. A calendar invite has been sent to share with all members of the committee. I look forward to all of you being involved in the review of Lambton Group. But are there any other issues the committee wishes to look at on our work programme? No, thank you very much. Well, okay. So at the moment, the work programme's good. So we'll move straight into then agenda item number 8, which is urgent business. I don't have any. Is there anybody else? No, thank you. Okay, moving on to agenda item 9 then. The date of the next meeting is the 22nd of November 2025. So this meeting of the councils over in Scrutiny Committee draws to a close. Thank you all and all our guests for their contributions this evening. Before then, though, I look forward to seeing all my fellow scrutineers on the 22nd of October. All right, and I close the meeting to that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chair.